Good morning, friends and enemies. Today is one day closer to your fantasy drafts, and one of the more difficult parts about being in a fantasy draft, especially if you're not on top of your shit, is deciding what players it's worth jumping over ADP for, right? You're sitting there and got your list of players queued up on whatever platform you play on, and they're going to tell you who the next best player available is, but you know inside your guts, literally, that the guy 7 spots below the top guy in the ADP is the better play, or at least the guy that you want, all right? So that's what this video is going to be talking about today. I'm talking through 8 players that I am super comfortable jumping over ADP in order to draft. When I think about dudes that I'm comfortable jumping above the ADP and, you're getting a reaction from your league mates out of, it's a risk reward. A lot of the times, the guys that are worth jumping up for are the guys with a lot of upside, right? You're not jumping ahead of everybody else for a floor play because typically there are a lot of floor plays available. There are only so many guys that have that juicy upside that can move the needle and really turn the league upside down, So a lot of the players on this list, I will argue for their upside case and why I'm okay jumping up and jumping over the current ADP list in order to get. We're going to start with the player that's highest up in ADP and work our way down to a dude that's right outside the first round. And the ADP I am referencing is from 4for4.com. It is free resource to use. I will link that down below for you guys. They have now updated it to include CBS, ESPN, Fantrax, FFPC, NFFC, NFL, Sleeper, Yahoo, Best Ball 10s, Drafters, and Underdog ADP. So this is quite literally an average of basically every platform out there right now. So I don't want to hear it from y'all, all right? Emeka, Egbuka, currently 92nd player off the board. We are talking about mid to late 8th round. Absolutely fine jumping up into the 7th round, maybe even earlier if you want to. When I look at this Bucs offense right now, they're going to throw the ball a lot. They're going to be a methodical offense that moves the ball with ease. And Emeka Egbuka will be one of the 2 starters on the field pretty much at all times at this point. He was their first round pick, nothing but insane hype all summer long. Like, I think Ja'Cory Crosby-Moret might actually be the only dude that's gotten more hype than Emeka Egbuka so far this summer. Jalen McMillan fell on his head this last preseason game, and they're now saying that there's a good chance they hold him out to week 9 or week 10 after their bye, okay? So he's out the door. Chris Godwin, more likely to start on the PUP list than I think not on the PUP list. You're talking about 4 weeks at the minimum. Opens the door wide open for Emeka to be a huge impact player right out the gate. He was an awesome player at Ohio State. Everyone from Ohio State just ends up being an awesome player, man. Don't overthink this one. A guy that you can get in the 8th round. This is a dude with legit upside, right? Mike Evans is going to move up my rankings as well, but he's pricey. Like, you're going to have to spend a 3rd, 4th round pick on a dude like Mike Evans, but he's also old too. Like, Father Time going to get him eventually. Would it be that crazy? Would it be crazy if Emeka Egbuka ends up playing the slot role that Godwin played last year and actually out-targeting a guy like Mike Evans? Yeah, it would probably be a little bit crazy, but if Evans is getting like 7 targets a game that are deep targets, valuable targets, Buka could see 8, 9 off the rip from a lower, A dot roll and just suck up targets in a PPR league. So Egbuka is easily a player worth jumping up a full round of ADP for in order to get over your league mates. Same type beat. We are talking about another first round wide receiver this year. That is Matthew Golden, the 23rd pick for the Green Bay Packers. He is going 1 spot ahead of Emeka Egbuka. So he is 91st overall, still a mid to late 8th round pick. Egbuka, same thing. Right now, the Packers receiver room, you have Christian Watson, obviously coming back from a torn ACL. He's not going to play for a while. You have Jaden Reed dealing with this foot that was in a walking boot. I believe he might be out of the walking boot right now, but we do have Matt LaFleur saying that, he's hopeful he could play for week 1. Kind of ominous, from the head coach to hear that when week 1 is slowly creeping up on us. And so far through the 2 preseason games, Matthew Golden has basically been operating as an every down outside wide receiver, which is not something that we saw from Jaden Reed. And everything you hear out of camp from Green Bay is like, Matthew Golden's got some of the best hands in this entire rookie class. Didn't need to hear that from the Green Bay camp, but he was awesome at Texas. He is electric. He's a downfield playmaker. He has really strong hands. You were seeing the slant balls go straight to him in this preseason game from Jordan Love, this most recent one they played, which is a sign of trust. Like, when the player is running a slant, that's like, you just got to trust that they're going to break right and they're going to be in front of their defender on that. Like, those plays happen like that. So the fact that Love is hitting Matthew Golden on those is, I think, a really, really good sign. Golden at the 807, another guy that, mid 7th round, totally fine with. This is just a lot of young wide receivers, all right? A lot of young kings on this list. We got Ricky Pearsall next up. He's currently going off the board 82nd overall at the 710. And just a reminder, if you want all of my rankings, you could see like these guys are all pretty much labeled as top targets in our rankings in the draft guide. But if you want to see who all of our top targets are, the guys that we are absolutely staying away from, and just the order in which I would rank these guys and draft them, all available in the draft guide right now on BDGE.co, whether you're in a super flex league, full PPR, half PPR, standard scoring, whatever. It's got all that stuff in there. It's got in detail write-ups on all the preseason games. So if you want to just skip all the fluff and get to what actually mattered for fantasy football, I do a weekly write-up on all the preseason games that are only available in the draft guide too. So BDGE.co, you can get it for a super duper discounted price if you just go check the partner offers page in the top right corner of the website. So head over to BDGE.co, hit the partner offers page, top right, see if you qualify. If you do, you'll get the draft guide for a very discounted price. But if not, I still suggest you cop it at full price. It will help you dominate your drafts. Ricky Pearsall, all right? So you're talking about a guy at the end of the 7th round that I think at this point, we are looking at a guy who is operating in the 49ers offense, who Vegas has pegged as a 10.5 win team, which is insanely high for a team that just finished last place in their division. Obviously, you know, some injuries, but it's not like they had an injury to their quarterback or anything like that, right? So they are really expecting a massive bounce back. And when you look at the receiver room, like Ayuk they're already saying, oh, maybe week 6 he'll be back. So he's going to be missing a large chunk of the fantasy season. Juwan Jennings still dealing with the calf injury. You have Debo now in Washington. Like this receiver room has completely just, you know, the ocean has parted ways for Ricky Pearsall to come out here and operate as the number 1, at worst, the wide receiver 2 out the gate. He was a first round pick last year. He is a really good athlete, a plus route runner, explosive. I think you can move him around the formation a lot. Juwan Jennings, I think is a good pick if he can get back healthy as well. But I think we've seen like what Juwan Jennings is. I don't think he has this magical upside that if he can put together a full year, which is what we got out of him last year, he was a good player. But I think Ricky P has some real untapped upside into what he can become in this offense. And, you know, Kyle Shanahan went out and handpicked him in the first round last year to replace whatever the, you know, eventual coming of this receiver core was, whether it was him seeing Debo leaving and Ricky Pearsall being the dude that he's using in motion a lot, using around the line of scrimmage, whatever. That last preseason game, too, looked phenomenal. Him and Brock Purdy had great connections. I mean, one drive, he had 4 targets, 3 catches, like 42 yards here. So Ricky P, I think there's a really good chance he leads this team in targets immediately. So love him at the end of the 7th round, would jump into the 6th round. Same thing with Rome Odunze, 73rd player off the board right now at the 701, someone I am comfortable taking in the 6th round. I have made my case all summer about the Chicago Bears. I'm very much in on this offense. I think Ben Johnson's going to turn this thing 180 degrees around. Had to make sure I didn't say 360 there. They're going to be different from last year. Like it cannot get worse from last year. The coaching, the scheme, the offense, the line, everything was just bad. Keenan Allen out of the way, 120 targets, no longer there. I just think Rome Odunze is really talented. I think Caleb Williams will put it back together after he lost it last year. You got Drew Dahlman coming in at center. Rest in peace to the Falcons offensive line. You've got Joe Thuney, who is one of the best guards in the entire NFL, and you've got Jonah Jackson coming in. Like their O-line is going to be tremendous. Ben Johnson is a tremendous play caller, and I think Rome Odunze is going to end up being the one in this offense. And when you have a guy like Caleb, who is a superstar, number 1 overall pick, former, a guy that anyone can agree with has as high of a ceiling as any former number 1 overall pick we've seen in the recent years, like you want to place a bet on a guy that could be the wide receiver 1 in that offense. And DJ Moore is fine, but Rome Odunze to me is a guy that 7th round, yeah, easily jumping up around an ADP to grab him if I believe in him, and I do. Next up on this list, we've got Calvin Ridley. He's going off at the 512. Now, I'd be hard-pressed to say I'd jump a full round into like the mid-4th or something like that for him, but I believe right now in my rankings, if I do head over to full PPR and I look at my overall rankings, wow, okay, I do have him up there. I have Calvin Ridley ranked as my 44th overall player. You're not going to have to take him that high, obviously. That's a round and a half earlier, but that's how high I am on him. He's a top 20 receiver for me. He's basically gotten top 20, if not top 15 opportunity in terms of targets and catches in each of the previous 2 seasons. And now he gets this major upgrade at quarterback in Cam Ward. Like maybe Cam Ward flops, but I don't think he's gonna. I'm actually excited to see Cam Ward play. They have an improved offensive line. They don't have real target competition behind Calvin Ridley. They brought in Tyler Lockett, who's super old, Van Jefferson, who's just super not good. And they brought in Shamir Dyke and Alec Ayumanor, who are day 3 rookies. So maybe one of them breaks out, but they're still day 3 rookies. So Calvin Ridley's the clear wide receiver 1 in this offense. Getting drafted at the 512, I'll easily take him over most of the receivers going in the middle of the 5th round right now in drafts. I think he has a ton of untapped potential with Cam Ward being injected into this offense. The next guy up on this list, and I'm going to preface this one and say, I don't know that I'm necessarily comfortable reaching for him, but I understand. And I'll hold your hand through the reach if you want, and I won't yell at you for doing it. And that's Treveyon Henderson. He's another dude where I don't know that there's many players who have had a better summer than Treveyon Henderson. And it's funny because when I was doing my dynasty write-ups, like when the offseason first kicks off and I'm starting to watch film on all the rookies, Treveyon Henderson was the second rookie I watched. It was Ashton Genty, and then it was Treveyon Henderson. And then I watched a bunch of running backs after him. And I was like, I can't believe Ohio State gave Quinshon Judkins that many more carries than Treveyon Henderson. Because to me, like on film, Henderson was a fucking animal. Like I was like, he might be my second favorite running back in this class. And I didn't stick to that given the draft capital of Amari and Hampton and all that kind of stuff. But like Treveyon Henderson has basically, cemented himself as a guy who's going to have volume in year 1. And he has a floor in the passing game. So his PPR floor, I think, is very much intact. They're going to scheme a lot of plays towards him. They're going to try to hit him on wheel routes. They're going to give him opportunities in the screen game. They're going to use him on outside zone runs. They're going to use him in toss plays and getting him in space. The question obviously lies in whether or not he takes over 60-40 role on carries, right? We don't know if that ever happens. We might be looking at a situation where Henderson makes splash plays weekly or every other week or whatnot, and he never really lives up to his full potential in year 1. If you think about like a Jahmyr Gibbs type of season, he could have that. But if something were to happen to like a Ramondre, I think he would have a much bigger share against Antonio Gibson than he would have against Ramondre. And Treveyon Henderson's just so explosive. He's such a good instinctive runner and can hit you, in the face with a haymaker on any given play. I like the fit. They've got the improved offensive line. Drake May coming into year 2. Josh McDaniels, the OC. Like, I like that more than they had last year. Does kind of scare me because he's always used a committee. I get the excitement is basically what I'm trying to say here. He's looked fantastic. Like, everything is lining up for him to be a legitimate home run pick for the Patriots. I do think where his price is correct, right? At 49th overall, or beginning of 5th, end of 4th round is around where I have him in my rankings as well. I think a lot of the question also comes down to when they get inside the 10 or 5 yard line, where do they go? Who is getting the plays? Is it just carries up the middle to Ramondre? They have been using Henderson a lot in the preseason so far with the starters when they're inside the 10 yard line. They've used both running backs on the field together sometimes. So I do think there's a chance he plays in that area of the field a little bit more than we were expecting earlier on. So with Henderson, again, he's the one guy I'll caveat and say, I don't know that I'm actually super comfortable reaching for, but I totally get it if you want to, and I don't think I'd blame you for it. We got 2 players left, and the first one here is a dude that I hope I leave every draft that I'm in with, and that's Chase Brown of the Cincinnati Bengals. I've talked about him ad nauseum so far this summer. He's currently the 23rd player off the board. He started this summer as like the 3.9 to 3.10. I don't think people believed in who he was as like a talent that could hold up over the course of the full year. I think they believed that they were going to bring in a free agent or that they were going to draft someone highly. They did none of the following. They brought in Samaje Perine. They drafted Taj Brooks in the 6th round. Zach Moss is no longer on the team anymore. So at the 211, obviously the higher you get up in ADP, like the less reach you can really do that makes you feel comfortable with it. Like when we're talking about egbuka or Matthew Golden at the end of the 8th round that I'm like jump up into the mid 7th, that's a round and a half. Like I'm not going to tell you to jump up a round and a half for Chase Brown because that'll bring you from fucking 211 to the 104. Don't do that, obviously. But in terms of like ratio, the percentage in which you're jumping, it's not that much crazier. Like Chase Brown is a dude where if you took him at the 205, I'd have no problem with that. Other people are gonna be like, whoa, it's early. But it's like, if that's your RB1, if you grabbed a Malik Neighbors or a Puka or Nico Collins and you're like, I want Chase Brown there, and Genty and Derrick Henry are off the board and Chase Brown's sitting there at the 205, no problem with it. From what we've seen all summer, Chase Brown, they are redesigning the run game for Chase Brown. One of my favorite podcasts that I listen to throughout the summer, every summer to help me get prepped, is the Athletic podcast. And they interview beat reporters, like the most respected beat reporters from every camp, basically. And they went to Cincinnati. And I like listening to more like people who have their hand on the pulse instead of like fantasy football people, even myself included. Because a lot of times we're giving you numbers that we paint a picture however we want. And we try to like hit these small sample sizes, and the football season is 17 regular season games. Like it's impossible to actually catch trends that matter. But you can get a glimpse of what an actual football team is planning to do, which is invaluable information when you talk to these beat reporters. And they basically said, like, one, of course, their run game is going directly through Chase Brown. They redesigned the run game this offseason because last year they went into the year with Zach Moss as their starter, and they designed the run game around Zach Moss. And what that meant is they couldn't do outside runs. They couldn't run toss plays because Zach Moss was too slow. Like, you can't run deep stretch plays to the outside zone because he's not going to get there. He's not fast enough to get around the tackles, whereas Chase Brown obviously is. So they've been implementing a lot more of that to the run game. But regardless, like, of course, it's going to be Chase Brown. He was dominant over the second half of last year. When we look at the preseason so far, he is playing pretty much every single snap with Joe Burrow. And Joe Burrow's been playing a lot of snaps. So they're showing you exactly what we should be expecting going into the regular season. Burrow and the Bengals, they've come out and they've said, we don't want to start slow. They keep starting 0-2, 0-3, and it's putting them in the back of the playoff race. This year, they're like, I'm not injured. I want to play as much as I can in the preseason, so we don't start slow in the regular season. And because of that, we're getting a ton of sample size of Joe Burrow under center in the preseason, and almost every single snap is with Chase Brown. He is catching passes on early downs. He's getting runs on early downs. He is there on the goal line. He comes out like one play a game for Samaje Perine on like a 3rd and 4 situation, and then immediately comes back onto the field. Like, I can't overstate how comfortable I am reaching up for Chase Brown this year in fantasy football. I think he is a legitimate blue chip RB1 prospect that we're going to look back at the end of this year and be like, of course, he's the lead running back that's going to get 75% of the opportunity in what's projected to be the highest scoring offense in the NFL. Like, their defense looked like it might break records this year for how bad they could be. I don't know if you guys watched that Washington-Cincinnati game on Monday night. I know it's preseason, but the Bengals played a lot of their starters. They didn't obviously have Trey Hendrickson because we don't know if Trey Hendrickson's going to be there. BJ Hill was the other guy that did not play on their defensive line. But besides that, they had basically all their starters out there. And Washington just did whatever they wanted to them. So bad defense, high scoring. Give me the starting running back there. And the last guy on this list is Brian Thomas Jr. He is currently the 14th player off the board at the 202. And I just want to say, this is not so much like a Brian Thomas Jr. thing. This is more so that tier of wide receivers, because you have basically Malik Neighbors starting at pick 8, Amon-Ra at 9, Puka at 10, Nico at 13, Brian Thomas Jr. at 14. So I'm kind of pinpointing the last guy in the ADP to tell you that all of those dudes are in the same tier for me. So if you're on a specific site where one of those guys is last on the list and you want to jump up, where like Malik Neighbors is the number 8 overall player per ADP on this list, but on CBS, Puka is the 14th player on this list. On ESPN, Brian Thomas Jr. is 15th. On NFL, Nico Collins is 16th. On FFPC, Amon-Ra St. Brown is 12th. So it's all to say, any of those dudes, if they happen to be the 13th, 14th, 15th, 16th player on the ADP, I am comfortable enough with you jumping up, or me jumping up to the 8th pick. They're all in a tier together. So if you have a preference of one of those guys, love them all. BTJ specifically, from what we've seen with Liam Cohen and this passing offense so far, like, they are looking far more progressive. They're going to use screens heavily like he did in Tampa Bay. They're using tons of play action. They're putting Brian Thomas Jr. in the slot. Like, I'm actually genuinely excited for this Jacksonville offense now. And you can make the upside case with any of these receivers, which is the point. Like, if you're looking at a list and like the ADP you're using says Malik has to be 8 and Brian Thomas Jr. is 14, like, wash that from your mind. Just think of those guys as a clump together and you're getting a high-end wide receiver one. So that was less like player that I'm willing to jump up for and more so just strategy. That tier of wide receivers is one that I like as high as the 7th or 8th pick in the draft this year. And as I mentioned, if you want to see all of the players that I'm jumping up for, my top targets, my must draft players, the guys that I think are going to break out, the riskiest players, the fucking cones out there, the all fade list, all that, my top sleepers, they're all in the draft guide right now, bdge.co. Top right corner, check the partner offers link. See if you qualify for a super duper discounted price on the draft guide. All you got to do is deposit $10 on MGM using code BDGE and it'll get you there. And shout out to the Discord for suggesting this video topic. If you've got any other suggestions for the remainder of the summer, let me know. All right. I love y'all. Smoochies.